This is the T.A.R. Life podcast from Team Anderson Realty.
Thank you for joining us, T.A.R. Life. We have my co-host, Melody Tate, the beautiful Jennifer Stewart, and my husband, Dr. Anderson.
I
With
finally made it in
Anderson
the big time.
Chiropractic Center,
Representing.
That's
located
right.
in Holly Springs. When did you open?
We opened up our practice in 2010.
2010.
So we have been there for a while.
It's been forever. I do recommend him. He's a great chiropractor. But we went to Greece with Chad, Dr. Anderson, Mel, and Jennifer. And so Greece was Chad's favorite
It was awesome.
place.
They were all amazing places, but Greece definitely took the
Out of
prize.
Ireland, Greece, and Egypt, it was Greece. I think we all have a little bit of our heart left in Santorini.
Oh, yeah.
That was
for
awesome.
Sure.
But we have to talk about the hike that we did.
Loved
it was
it.
Mel's first hike ever.
Yep. My first.
So Mel she was a brand new person when it comes to hiking. How long had you hiked in the past?
Maybe a couple. I would go down to Raven Rock, just local stuff.
Okay, just
So,
little
yeah.
stuff. And I think Jennifer is the one that had the most hiking experience. And I mean, Chad and I have done some hiking.
We've done some hikes.
Oh,
We've done some hikes.
That's right.
We've done some hikes with very poor attire.
Yeah.
And you were you pregnant?
Oh, I was pregnant.
Yeah.
We picked the hardest trail in North America.
And I wore Sperry's, and she had aqua socks.
Oh my God. And I kept falling and slipping, and Chad's I'm like, don't even assist me. And he's like, ooh, Erica's so bad.
Well, I did let her pick the hike because she was pregnant, so I figured I would let her pick the hike.
No,
and
you picked it.
You picked
Well,
it.
I said here's 3 choices, which one? And he picked the hardest trail in North
Did you get
America.
blisters from that?
It was a rough hike.
Yeah, and I had sausage fingers, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
was and the heat was intense. But
It was
we
beautiful,
hadn't
though.
done anything that intense since that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And so
What was
Diane,
worse, Santorini or Hawaii?
I'll say Hawaii.
Hawaii was the most treacherous,
Okay.
but Santorini, that hike made it feel like it was never going to end.
Okay.
So for those that have no idea what we're talking about, my aunt, Diane, who's our office manager, she loves hiking and being outdoors. So we were going to entertain her idea of doing a hike. And we had this thought that it's probably going to be like 2 hours. She was like, it's not that far. It's just like a little bit. And so we were so game for that. And then we started our trail. And before it even started, it took us, 45 minutes from the hotel?
Oh,
Yeah, because she didn't take into account that the trail had started like in town.
No, she she just didn't tell us because she knew that we would be like, so
I think it was an hour.
then
Did
we-
it added like at least a mile and a half
Yeah.
on.
And so we get to the trailhead and she goes, you see way yonder in the distance where the clouds are and you can barely see anything. That's where our destination is and we're going to walk there. And we were like, what? This is like mountains.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was a crazy
There were
terrain.
cobblestone roads
yeah,
that
it was all different types of
our
terrain.
feet. So it was an arduous journey. It was like you just felt like you were, I don't know, with Moses walking for
But having good shoes
40,
made it so
40
much
days
easier.
and 40 nights
Yeah,
or
but
whatever.
my feet
Shoes.
were swelling. My toes were. So it was pushing up against the top of my shoes.
Yeah.
I
So-
was once again in my Nobles.
Nobles.
They've gone all over the world with me.
Not all-terrain sneakers.
They're not, but they worked well.
They work. I mean, even in the Grand Canyon in the snow. I mean,
skiing down.
Yeah,
That's
they're very,
right.
very nice.
Let's not forget to mention that we had 1 bottle of water each.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we were not
Yes.
prepared for this at all.
But
It's
we
like-
had to make it 2 by sunset because there was going to be a beautiful sunset in this town that was kind of like on a peninsula of the island. And so we started booking it.
Yep.
And Jennifer, Chad, and I were like, we got this. And
And
Mel
I'm
at the beginning
behind.
was like, we could just stop and we could just have wine or go to like a
Yeah.
restaurant. And
Yep.
we really don't need to do this. And we were like, no, we're doing it because Diane, and she had her friend Vivian, who just got finished with her cancer treatment. And I was like, I wasn't saying she couldn't do it because she has raw will. She's German. But I was like, are you sure you can handle this? And she was like, if you can handle it, I can handle it.
Yeah.
And so
we kind of split up in little groups.
oh my gosh.
You 3 together, me, and then those
Yeah,
two.
they
So
were
like,
at the very
I'm like,
end.
as long as they don't catch up to me, like I'm good.
Once you
'Cause-
found that right pace, you had to keep
Right,
on
yeah.
going. Once
Oh,
you slowed
yeah,
down, it
yeah.
made it rough.
Oh
That's
my
rough.
gosh. And Vivian at one point thought Erica did not walk this whole way. I'm
Mm-mm.
convinced that she took a taxi.
yeah.
And so we ended up having pictures
Yep.
of the church that was above, like right before we descended into the peninsula area.
Yeah.
And I was like, we have pictures. We
Yeah,
have evidence.
It was great. It was really fun.
We did it. And
the
we
best
finally.
part of that was the end.
Yeah,
the finish
the
line,
restaurant. What
the
was the name of that
views.
restaurant?
Mia's.
Mia's.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
good.
Oh my gosh, gourmet.
I have olive oil from there. And
Wow.
It's so good.
I'm normally not a real adventurous eater, but that octopus,
The
it
octopus,
was
yeah,
good.
I was like,
Yeah.
it was really
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the view was beautiful.
Oh,
The
sunset.
wine
They
was
gave
that made
you
it worth it.
blankets.
Mhm.
Oh, and it was still freezing, but we were outside with a beautiful water view. It made it so our little feet were swollen, and you could feel the cobblestones every step. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
Yes.
definitely, it was rough.
Yeah.
And knowing that we were driving back made it nice, knowing
Oh,
that we didn't have
yeah,
to do it
absolutely.
again. So that
we
was
were not. We were not
Mission
milking
Oh,
complete.
that.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But
That meal
Vivian
was a
and
nice
Diane
reward.
did it. You know, Diane would have totally beaten us. Like, she
Oh,
is
yeah.
just in amazing shape. Like,
Yeah.
if it wasn't for her friend, she would have
Mhm.
passed us. She would have ran
Probably.
circles around us.
Oh yeah, it was.
But
It
we
was
did a
really-
good job.
We did. It was mission
I think
accomplished.
so.
It
We
was
did
really
it.
It
And
was
I think that
good.
was our last hike of the entire trip.
Okay,
like,
yeah,
true
of the
hike.
trip. Yeah, I'm like, no,
Like,
what?
we did a mini hike.
Yep.
Then Santorini was hardcore. And we didn't do much in Egypt hiking.
Yeah, we really
wise.
couldn't venture outside the
No.
compound a whole
No.
lot.
Mm-mm.
No. So,
Yeah, the bomb sniffing dogs and everything kind of ruined that vibe.
I mean, I would do it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would do
But
it.
we've done hikes since then.
Have
Yeah.
we?
Utah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We did it in
Utah.
the snow.
Snow.
Yeah.
And then we did one in Arizona.
Mel
Yep.
loves extreme hiking. So if you can
If you're not
put
going to
her-
die,
yeah.
I'm just not
That's
going to
right.
do it.
That's
If you
right.
have a chance
Boring.
of dying, we don't do it.
She doesn't want a leisure hike. She wants to feel like she's struggling and
Yes.
suffering.
Yes,
Exactly.
Exactly. That's our motto. If you can't die, we don't do it.
Yeah, and
right.
we're wingers. We're gonna do whatever we want to do and we're on a whim.
Wingers.
That's right.
So, anyways, Dr. Anderson,
Yes, yes.
tell us where you went to college.
I went to undergraduate school at the University of Cincinnati, and then I did my
What was-
chiropractic
What
studies.
was your undergrad?
My undergraduate degree was in exercise physiology.
Uh-huh.
And then after finishing undergrad, I worked for a little while at Xavier University as a strength coach. And after working there for a little while, and I really enjoyed the work, but after being up at 5 o'clock in the morning for the women's volleyball workouts, being there at 7 o'clock at night for the men's basketball team, I realized that this isn't something I want to do forever. So I figured it was time to think of something to go back to school for. And that's what kind of led me to chiropractic. And then I went
Ah.
to a chiropractic college at Palmer College of Chiropractic in Port Orange, Florida.
My
Nice.
stepfather is a chiropractor. I call my stepfather. He's not legally anymore, but he's always going to be my stepfather. He went to Life, right?
It's another great school.
Yeah, he went to Life in Georgia, and he has always said that Chad was the best adjuster that he's ever had.
Ooh.
And so, but I will say, when Chad first
I
started,
had a lot of critiques.
he had a little bit to learn. So I want to say that I helped him adjust better.
She did. She did. But she
I
was,
give myself all the credit on that.
but when
But
she would critique my adjusting, she really came at it from a place of love. She was very, very, you guys
I'm
know her. You guys
sure.
know her. It was very, she was very, very nice about the way she came about it. Well, it was very
I
tactful.
think you're going to break my jaw. I think it's dislocated.
Well, it came from a place of love. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I had to practice. So
That's
he's
right.
like, hey, I need to practice on you now. Everybody listening, this was over a decade
It
ago.
was a long time
It was
ago.
a long time ago. So he is a skilled adjuster.
That's right.
He
I've come a long
adjusts
way.
Jennifer
Mhm.
regularly, and
Come
I
a
think
long
Mel
way.
still needs to experience him.
That's right.
do.
I'm waiting, Mel. I'm waiting, Mel.
So tell us. So I want to go into, for people that have never experienced chiropractic, you guys have the lowest insurance when it comes to, what is it? What kind of insurance?
Malpractice insurance. And that's one
Okay.
thing I think, with chiropractic, that's always, especially people who have never really experienced chiropractic. I think one of the things that people are always concerned with or asking about is, how safe we are as chiropractors. And
Because
I've
they
had
think
people
that
in my
it
practice.
looks like you're breaking
Right.
their
Well, I
neck,
mean,
'cause
now
they
with
hear
the,
that popping.
exactly, with the videos people see and things like that, that's one of the first things that people ask are, how safe we are. And I think one of the biggest examples that I always use when I'm trying to explain how safe we are as chiropractors, I tell them to, go ask your medical doctor how much money they pay for malpractice insurance every year. And I'll tell you what I pay. And I think we pay maybe under $2,000 a year for
Wow.
malpractice insurance.
mean,
and
that's
medical
less than
doctors,
what I pay at the firm.
we pay very, very little because we're so safe. And that's something I think, insurance, just from a very, non-bias, judgment zone, insurance is a really, great judgment of how safe something is. And I think when you look at how little we as chiropractors pay for malpractice insurance compared to what medical doctors pay for malpractice insurance, I'd say we're probably the safer option.
I will say though, because I have so much experience because of my stepfather and I remember his practice, there are some chiropractors out there that do not do x-rays when they first initially have a patient, but you guys always do.
Well, we
So,
do them when medically necessary. I mean, X-rays aren't something you need with every patient,
no, but I mean, like
after
mostly, right?
right. I mean, after we do an exam, I mean, certainly if somebody has something come up on the exam that that warrants question or that warrants a little more investigation, the X-ray is a great tool to make sure that what we do is being done safely.
But there are some chiropractors that don't have
There
Oh,
are.
x-rays. Like,
absolutely.
There
I've
are,
been
and
there.
Yeah.
there are. And again, I mean,
yeah.
it's
and it's expensive.
it's a
so
very
some of
it's
them
a big
don't.
investment.
I would have, and you paid over 10 years ago. It was like 55,000.
Yeah, about 55 grand just for the X-ray machine.
Yeah,
So it
and
was,
that was it would be more now because
Right.
of inflation
Yeah.
and whatnot. But I always felt like that's a nice gauge on a chiropractor if they have invested in something like
Mhm.
that. So if they need that tool, they can use it.
right.
Rather than people who don't have the means or the ability to, they're just kind of, if there's
Mhm.
something that they may want to investigate further, they have to refer it out.
Right. And that's something that, I do see quite a bit. I think, I know one, there are a few practices around, one of the practices, more of a franchise practice, the joint, that's
Mhm.
basically, they, people go in there for the adjustment. And one thing I will give them credit for, I actually have had many times where patients have gone to the joint with after an auto accident injury or after some kind of a traumatic injury. And a lot of times the doctors there will send them my way because they know that we're equipped to, do the
Yeah,
proper
you
exam,
guys
take
work
X-rays.
together.
So I think
and
it's
yeah, it's
something that as long as you're as a doctor, if you don't have the right tools to do the proper exam, as long as you're willing to refer that patient out somewhere else,
and
that's the
you've
right way to do
referred
it.
them to orthopedics, and
Absolutely.
orthopedics have referred patients to you.
Absolutely. And
So,
that's
I mean, I think that's the one thing that Chad
hmm
has always, or Dr. Anderson has always believed is that, he can take it so far,
right.
but there are some cases and circumstances where it's medically necessary to use a different type of physician.
Exactly.
And you're not scared
Exactly.
to refer them out. And they have actually found, which I found interesting, is more physicians are referring to you than they
Mhm.
did even a decade ago, right?
Well, I think that's one thing. I think chiropractic as a profession, we really have come a long way from, the early years of chiropractic. I know back in the early years, we've been around. That's one thing too. A lot of people that don't understand chiropractic, they think it's some new age technology, some new thing. I mean, we've been around since 1895.
Mhm.
Our profession is pretty old, but some of the back in the early years with chiropractic, it was such a battle between the chiropractic profession, the medical profession, and I think it really came down to just a power struggle. And I think it was just this mindset of us against them, and we wanted everyone to be chiropractic patients, they wanted people to be medical patients, and I think that did kind of carry on for a long time. But now I think with just with technology and with better education, people understand what we do as chiropractors. We do work so much closer together now to where I think we are a very important piece to the puzzle, just with in the medical realm. And I think that's something that is really beneficial to patients now that we can all work together. That's not us against them, that we all kind of have our place and our niche. And that's something we kind of pride ourselves on in our practice, is that we work very closely with the medical community.
Yeah. And I mean, and here's another thing too that people, when you're adjusting, let's say a newborn or an infant,
Hmm.
your adjusting technique is different, right?
Absolutely.
And going back to you guys started in 1895, my grandmother, because I don't want to forget saying this, in the 1930s, she was a chiropractic patient. And
Mhm.
she was, even before she passed, always an advocate for chiropractic.
yeah.
And it
Right.
really, before it was mainstream per se, because she has scoliosis or had
Mhm.
scoliosis, and it was a huge help for her. But going back, when you adjust an infant
Mhm.
versus an adult that has no issues or limitations, there is a little bit, you don't have to manipulate an infant as much as you do perhaps.
Exactly. Well, I mean, with I think just with with patients in general. I mean, some people are much easier to adjust than others. And I think a lot of it comes down to what kind of what kind of muscle tone they have, how much inflammation, how much resistance we have with muscular imbalances and things like
Mhm.
that. To where if you take a younger patient that really doesn't have issues with muscle spasms and things like that, I mean, with them it's just real. Real light touch, real light, just to kind of mobilize the joints. You're not really, having to go through and relax muscles prior to the adjustment. You're not having to put them on therapy for 30 minutes prior. So it's definitely, the techniques that we use, you really vary quite a bit from patient to patient.
And do you ever use activator?
I actually do. I have an activator in my office. I mean, there are a
What
lot of
is
different ways.
activator?
Activator it's an adjusting tool that some chiropractors use. And again, I mean, through my years of practice, I get much better results with a hands-on manual adjustment. But I mean, I do like to have the activator in my practice because there are some patients
Your
that
father liked
my
activator.
father loved the activator, and I think it is a way
What
to
is it?
adjust. It's a little
It's like this little
spring-loaded tool that you
clicky
can
tool.
basically just apply direct pressure to the
Metal
vertebrae.
thing.
You
Yeah.
kind of
Oh.
click
Yeah.
the tool and it mobilizes the joint. I would say, they are effective. I feel like I get much better results with my hands-on manual adjustments, but there are some people who
I don't
they
like
just
them.
they don't want to get they
At
don't
all.
I
want to
want a
get,
full-on
they don't
manual
want to
adjustment.
hear any noise. They don't want
Oh,
to
yeah, I
they
don't
don't
want
want to
to
get
either.
adjusted the
Oh,
manual
you
way.
need to. If you're riding with us, you got to have a full manual adjustment.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to do it the old-fashioned way.
No,
though.
I want him to do it.
Oh,
not,
yes. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
You don't want
Right.
the clicky
Yeah,
tool.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to go weekly to have it done because I was getting really bad
Yeah.
migraines.
And
so
again,
they
they're
would do a full with their hands.
Yeah, I was going to one of the local places, and I
Okay.
was going once a
Ah.
week. But I
Yeah.
will say,
Yeah.
I did that for probably 2 years, but my headaches went away.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But now every time I turn my head, I can hear a little,
clicking.
I don't know,
I think it's time to get adjusted
Ah.
again, Mel.
like
Yeah.
that. But it's not just me. I actually had asked Austin about it, and he's like, "Yeah, when Chad's on today, make sure you ask him. Is it normal when you turn your head, you can hear like a little bit of a?"
Well,
I
sometimes you
can.
can. It's called crepitus. I mean,
can.
anytime the joints
Means you're
aren't
getting
moving and
old.
gliding properly.
Okay,
You're gonna-
What's your age?
I'm not getting old.
No, man, we're going to go there. We're going to go there.
39, people. 39. But no, when you turn your head, you don't.
I hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
but it
sometimes-
only happened once I got adjusted.
Well, I think maybe you
Or maybe you
need to
just
get readjusted.
noticed it too.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like tinnitus in your ear, I have tinnitus, but I don't
Mhm.
really think about it, and therefore I don't hear it, but it's there.
I need to come get adjusted.
Yeah,
I
we're gonna-
will say it probably would help.
Yeah, absolutely would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when somebody's getting adjusted the first time, I know, and this is such an interesting thing. When I first started working with you, I had the behind the scenes. I was the chiropractic assistant, the office manager, and whatnot. But we had our brand new patients when they first get adjusted. Sometimes they felt like they had been, like they were sore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because they still come back for more. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not that intense. But people should understand that when they have their first adjustment, they could get sore. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that there's something that went wrong with it. It just means what?
I always explain it, a lot of times going to getting adjusted the first time, it's almost like going to the gym for the first time. I mean, a
Oh.
lot of times
Mm.
if joints aren't
point.
moving properly, certain
Mhm.
muscles aren't engaging, aren't activating properly, it's almost like once we get those joints moving the proper way and get muscles working again, that might be the first time that muscle's engaged properly in years. So, once those muscles have been on vacation for a long time and now we get those muscles and joints working the right way, it can be like going to the gym for the first time. It can cause some soreness, but once we kind of get through that initial adjustment, kind of get everything working properly, the spine functioning properly, that soreness goes away. And I think that's something that as a chiropractor, you need to make sure that you explain that to the patients up front. This is what you might expect, because if you don't,
Yeah,
And
then
they-
they get freaked
right.
out. They
Yeah.
think, guys, there's something traumatic
but
happening.
I think one thing we do in our office as well, I think there are things that you can do and ways that we can adjust to really minimize that quite a bit. But did I cut you off?
No. No.
Keep
I
rolling.
just keep rolling. You got But I think there are some things that we do in our practice to really minimize the soreness. I think sometimes, we do a lot of the soft tissue therapy in the practice. We do moist heat therapy, therapeutic muscle stimulation. We have an intersegmental traction table, and they're all things that we do I kind of explain it, preparing the body to be adjusted to where if those muscles are loosened up and they're not fighting me so much during the adjustment, a lot of times they don't go through
How
the
long?
trauma
How
that.
long is an adjustment for you?
How long does the actual
Yeah.
adjustment last? I mean, I
Like
mean,
an existing patient. You come in and out.
Yeah.
well, I mean, depending on what they're doing. I mean, if somebody's going through, all the soft tissue therapies in the practice as well, from the time they walk into the office, they might be on, moist heat therapy and muscle stimulation for 15 minutes.
Okay.
We'll, flip them around, do traction for 10 minutes. Once they actually get to me and it's time for the adjustment portion of the visit, I mean, I can normally adjust somebody in under 5 minutes,
Okay,
unless they
yeah.
have something new going on. If they have a new problem or something, if I have to do something a little more extensive, it might take a little longer. But typically just a full spine adjustment, I can, normally kind of get
What's
through that in
that
under 5
movement
minutes.
that Jennifer and I like where we put our
No,
hands
that's
behind?
not really a. That's right. That's kind of.
That's weird. It's okay.
Yeah,
Like,
that's-
Rachel, I
but
want you to talk
that-
about
that-
that.
that's
That's your question.
that's well,
What
it's,
is it?
it's not really in the chiropractic textbooks.
But
it's
I
kind
mean,
of
it is
a.
amazing.
It's
Oh,
a
when you-
different maneuver. It's something
the
that's.
back.
What's it called?
At the decompression.
I
of the
tell you, there
back.
really isn't a name for it. It's more of a long lever manipulation, and actually, it kind of comes
amazing.
from another realm in the health field, osteopaths.
You've had
Osteopathic
that, right?
medicine, they use a
Oh.
lot of long lever adjustments, and that's something a lot of some chiropractors have kind of taken a few of the osteopathic techniques and kind of morphed them into our own. But it's
Do you ever use it with patients?
I do. That there are
Okay.
some people that, if I use it a lot with our pregnant patients. I think
Yeah,
it's
he used it when I was
yeah.
pregnant.
because there are
first.
some times where certain adjustments that I might do with a patient lying
Do
prone
you do
or
that
face
hip
down.
thing with them when they're pregnant too? Like
There's a
me?
lot of different things we do
Yeah.
during
What hip
pregnancy.
thing?
He would do some sort of thing where he would kind of like pull. What was it like
It's a long lever traction
on
of the
my
femur and the
leg,
leg.
and
It
it
would,
helped my sciatic
Yeah,
pain
my sciatic pain was awful.
significantly. Yeah,
I've been laying down and I'm like, I can't get up.
yeah. No, and has he
Yep.
done that one with no? Has he the hip one?
I normally do that.
Yeah,
I
you
keep-
know
I
what?
keep
I
the
think
side
he may
posture.
have because you
I have
had.
sciatic pain.
Yeah, and he saw at one point Jennifer's leg was a lot shorter than the other. That's one thing
Yeah.
that's
My
interesting.
whole body's like this.
Yeah, and after you adjust them, it kind of levels them out, right?
Well, a lot of times it will. I mean, we as humans are such a one-side dominant creature. I find that
Mhm.
most people, you're either right-handed, you're left-handed. So we
Yeah.
develop a lot of muscular imbalance. And, over time, if one side of the body is, overworking the other side, it'll raise the hips on one side. It'll make one leg seem shorter. And with the adjustments, if we can really start to relax that muscle tone and mobilize the joints, the body wants to sit in a more neutral state. So after the adjustments, a lot of times we
Hmm.
can level the legs as well.
I like that.
What's
That's right.
the reasons that you feel like people need to go see a chiropractor? Like if someone just has never experienced it before, like what would be the specific
I
reason?
think it really
right?
varies from patient to patient. I'd say, most people that, that don't come from a chiropractic family, don't come from a chiropractic background, that don't really, have a history of chiropractic, I'd say the things that probably bring them, into our practice are normally, neck pain, headaches, lower back
Yeah.
pain, sciatic pain down the legs. But, those patients, once they come in as patients and we get them feeling better, they find that, even after those problems are resolved, they just feel better. Their bodies are functioning better and more
Mhm.
properly after the adjustment. So they typically continue to take advantage of the chiropractic care, long after we fix that acute issue that brought them in.
Mhm.
And there are patients that, they just come from a chiropractic family. They've been going to chiropractors forever and they just
Like
come in
me.
as maintenance patients. They come in
Yeah.
without problems. And the reason they
Or
come in is
working out.
yeah,
Oh,
Really
yeah,
good for recovery.
absolutely.
yeah.
Very good recovery.
Right. And we see a lot of different things in the practice. And there are things that people come in with one problem and they don't really mention other issues that they've had going on. And then after we get to
Mhm.
working on them for a little while, they say, I never mentioned, this blood pressure that's getting better now. And this, and
Yeah.
this, I didn't tell you about this
Yeah.
dizziness I was having and now I'm feeling better. And I say, as much as I'd love to take all the credit for that, I didn't really do anything. I just allowed your body to do its job and heal itself.
Yeah.
And
You have
that's
massage
what
therapists
happens.
in your practice as well, right?
We do. We have two amazing massage therapists in the practice. And I'm a
Mention this podcast for free massages. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Team Anderson Realty is going to be giving away coupons for free massage in the practice. So yes.
Totally kidding.
So call Team
Disclaimer,
Anderson
not
Realty
happening.
for your free massage. You come on over.
But you guys, because you have two, there
Mhm.
are openings there's more availability than somebody who has like one.
Right. And that's
One
really why we
massage
added a second
therapist.
massage therapist.
Mhm.
And that's one thing. I know massage therapy has always been a very big part of our practice. And I think the one downside to massage therapy, especially once you get a really good therapist, is, I mean, they can physically only see one person per hour.
Mhm.
So it's one of those, that was the only problem we ever had with a lot of our great massage therapists was they would get busy so fast. And then we had so many people wanting to get in for that massage and we weren't able to get them in.
You know what
So
I
we've got
love?
two.
You know what I love about your massage therapist? Who does my father see in
He
your
sees
practice? Chris. And
Yep.
so I am big into making sure that my dad just has like coconut like oil on his body, even though they use a lot of organic products and nice, good products for their oils. He had no problem
Mhm.
using that
What you wanted to.
for my
Mhm.
father, and it's just it's made a huge difference
Oh,
for
yeah.
him. So he never got, the last time he had a massage was in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And he said that he never realizes how much he needs it until he gets it.
Right.
And it's a huge, whether it's chiropractic or massage therapy, incorporating that stuff into your lifestyle can really
Mhm.
aid, I think, in not just longevity, but quality
Absolutely.
of life.
Absolutely.
Because I know Jennifer, she doesn't get in enough, but she should get in more frequently. Mel's never been adjusted by him. I think it's
No,
time.
I think it's time. I think
It's
we're
time.
there.
That's
I
right.
think we're there. So I have a question. So when you have a massage, it
Mhm.
releases toxins in your body,
Mhm.
right? That's why we drink a lot of water afterwards. Your dad wasn't feeling well when we had the one in Arizona.
Yeah, I think she
Yeah.
was like not a shaman, but like
Right.
Something.
Which is why
She
most
was,
massage therapists encourage you
specializes
after
in
massage to
cancer.
drink a lot of
Yeah.
water to flush that out.
it's the
But
lymphatic system, right?
Mhm.
My
Yeah.
question would be, is it when you do an adjustment, again, I've been adjusted for a few years, but when you do an adjustment, does it release toxins in your body the same way that a massage
Not necessarily
does?
releasing toxins because,
Okay.
with the massage, they're physically, really going through and,
Muscle.
working on the musculature
Okay.
fiber. Because a lot of times, one of the byproducts of muscle contraction is lactic acid. So a lot of times when you get to trigger points and get those knots in the muscles, a lot of times what those knots are, it's just an accumulation of lactic acid in the muscle. So when the massage therapist is really working on those trigger points, working on those knots, what they're really doing, they're kind of releasing that into the body. And you really have to make sure after the massage that you're drinking a lot of water to flush that out of the system. With an adjustment, there's really, it's less work on the soft tissue, more work on the spinal level specifically. So there's not really a release
Does
of
it release
toxins per se.
endorphins?
It does. I mean, it really, with the adjustment, we're really stimulating the central nervous system.
Does popping create arthritis?
That is a myth.
I know.
that is a
That's
myth.
why I'm
Okay.
mentioning
That
it.
is a myth.
Yeah.
You know, the fingers when
Yeah.
you hear that? Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
Let
It's
me see
just
if I
gases
can-
releasing out of the joint
Gone.
capsule.
I love
That
it.
is a myth.
I love it.
Mythbusters.
Huh.
So that is not anything. Does it help or does it not help? Or
When you're popping your knuckles, I think, as long as you're taking that joint through the normal range of motion, it's not causing any harm. But, sometimes when you start taking your joints the opposite direction,
yeah,
that,
I can see
it's not,
that.
the popping isn't what's causing the damage. It's just taking that joint through a range of motion that isn't normal for that joint.
Mm.
So as long as you're taking your joints through that normal range of motion, you feel the cavitation. It's just gases releasing out of the joint capsule.
And the people that work for you to be a chiropractic assistant, it's not just, they have to go through a certain level of training, right?
They do now, and that's something that is relatively new. I guess they've been requiring the CA certification, chiropractic assistant certification. I think they started doing that. I think it was, again, don't quote me on the dates. I think it may have been around 2012 or so. And I think it's really been kind of a nice thing. And I think the reason our state started doing that was really based on insurance. Because I mean, we as chiropractors for years have been able to, bring in staff and kind of train them ourselves, on what they need to do in the office as a chiropractic assistant. But what started happening, you started seeing a lot of these insurance companies that were starting to refuse paying for modalities that weren't provided by a certified
Oh, that's
practitioner.
interesting.
So what our state association did to kind of jump a step ahead of that, they decided to start certifying our chiropractic assistants to where if insurance companies ever tried to deny paying for a service, based on someone not being certified, they can't really do that with our profession because our assistants are certified.
What does that
chiropractic
look like to
assistants.
get certified?
I believe it is a 50-hour course. Most of it's online. There is there's a test portion that the girls have to, I believe they have to
And
get
some people don't pass that, right?
They are. I did.
Yeah.
I had an employee at one time, super nice kid. He was great. Patients liked him, but he couldn't pass the test. So it is something.
Yeah,
It's
so it's
something
not that easy.
It's not. It's something
Yeah.
that you definitely. I have a few employees now that have been studying for it.
And does that certify them in X-ray as well, or
It
is
does
that
not.
separate?
There's an extra certification for X-ray.
What does that look like?
That is, I believe that course there. I want to say that one is a 150-hour course. Kind of similar thing. There's an online portion. Then there's a practical portion where they have to just show their competency of patient positioning and getting the proper films. And I think with that, now it's much easier with the X-ray certification now that most practices do have digital X-ray. I know years ago when we had the dark rooms and the film and the processing, that was a big part of the X-ray certification was learning how to process the films. And now that it's digital, that's
Yeah.
simplified the process quite a bit.
Oh
So
my
I
gosh,
don't
yeah.
miss the dark
I
rooms.
remember my stepfather.
Oh, yeah.
He had the dark room and he had these big films.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they
it was-
push them through the machine,
yeah.
and it would, it would take a while to.
It would take a while, and it was risky. I mean, a lot of that stuff was very expensive. I remember one of the very first practices that I ever worked at out in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. They had the X-ray with the plain film X-ray, and you've got to be very careful with the film. If you have the film box open, you can't turn the lights on, or you ruin all the film.
Oh, wow.
And we
Those
had
are
a couple
expensive.
times where a couple girls that weren't paying attention in the X-ray processing room would flip that light on with the film box open, and they
And
would
how
ruin.
much would that?
It could be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of film.
Whoa!
So it was a risky situation as well. So I am a big fan of digital X-ray. It has made life much easier.
Yeah.
And how many other associate doctors do you have working out of your practice?
Right now, we do have 3 doctors total in the practice. Myself, I'm pretty much just Monday through Friday right now. I do have another Dr. Portner's there. He's there Monday through Fridays right now as well. Dr. Todd Friesian, he's been there on Saturdays. Saturdays have been a little bit tricky, kind of going back and forth with the Saturday hours. It's one of the hardest things with any business now is staffing.
Oh, yeah.
And trying to find staff, because I've got we have a very open schedule throughout the week, so we kind of ran against the problem of having my great staff during the week was hard to find extra hours for them to work Saturdays as well. And we had a few situations where we had some employees that were in college and school, and they were able to do the Saturdays for us, Then once they kind of move on, get to a certain level and they weren't able to do Saturdays, it was really hard to find that mix of someone that
You'll
that only wanted
probably
to do
get that back
Saturdays.
at some
We
point
definitely
though,
want to.
right?
That's definitely something we plan on doing is, once we kind of get to a point where we can, validate bringing on another employee to cover the Saturdays.
Yeah. I
So,
think that's a good point.
mhm,
I like that
And-
you guys actually have like a brick and mortar. Like it's a, I know
right.
you're not in a shopping center.
Yeah.
Like you're
Mhm.
actually like, I feel like when I go by
Yeah.
there every day,
Right.
it's like a real doctor's office.
Well, I think one
Yeah,
thing too that we do that a lot of
absolutely.
patients do really enjoy is just the privacy we have in our practice.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think something, I've been to other practices that, a lot of the soft tissue therapy that we talked about earlier with the moist heat therapy, the muscle stimulation, a lot of offices, a lot of offices have just one big room with
Oh,
all
that's
these
what I'm
beds
used
next
to.
to each other and
Yeah.
they all just land there. You're looking at your neighbor.
It's not private at all.
It's not. In
Yeah.
our practice, we've got, very private,
Mhm.
therapy bays that is, you're the only one in the room. You get to really
Mhm.
relax and, kind of unplug in there. And as well as our adjusting rooms as well, we have separate rooms where it's just the doctor and the patient in the adjusting rooms as well. So it's very private.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I
patients do
I
like
like
that.
that. Just because
Yeah, it's
The
the
very
hardest part for
relaxing.
me when
Yeah.
you're
I
getting
like
adjusted
those
is your
little
neck.
days.
Spa.
Yeah.
Well, it is funny how some patients, we always kind of joke and just call it forced relaxation because a lot of the
Oh, yeah.
patients when they come in for the, 15, 20 minutes of therapy, that's probably the only relaxation some people
Meditation
get.
as
They
well.
do.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Patients love
true.
it because,
It is.
you're,
It is
you're busy,
very
your life is
true.
so busy.
Yeah.
You're on the go.
Mhm.
When you come in and we say, you must lay down and relax. Yes,
Yep.
sir. They lay down and
Oh yeah, it's nap
people love it.
time.
Yeah.
And I think it's
It's-
something, it's forced, but people
Yeah.
love it.
When you're acute, how often do you normally see people? And when it's just maintenance
It
or
really-
just people wanted for their lifestyle, what do you
Right.
see in terms of visitation?
It really varies from patient to patient. A lot of our patients that come in, with, some pretty acute pain issues, they might come in 3 times a week for 2 or 3 weeks until that pain is gone.
Maybe more, right?
Maybe more. And that's kind of, and I think, kind of the way that we explain that to our patients, we kind of explain that, if someone comes in, they're on that 8 or 9 out of 10 on the pain scale, I'm going to have them come in, 3 times a week until the pain's gone.
Yeah.
And that might be a week. It might be
And
2 weeks. It might be
honestly, like,
3. But I think
I
when
had
they,
him adjust me
Mhm,
like probably 7 days a week when I fell off my
I
pony.
remember
Mhm.
that.
And I know that Jennifer has used the portable TENS unit that you sell.
Oh,
Mhm.
that thing.
Let's talk
Those
is
are
about
great.
that. Tell us the
amazing.
pain, why you had it, and then how that helped
Oh,
you.
What was it from lifting? I think it was from doing.
I think it was
squats or
weightlifting. I think
something.
you tweaked something.
Yeah, I had like major pain
She
in my
was
lower
acute.
back,
Mhm.
Oh, I got that
And-
too from that
Yeah.
belt squat.
and you guys
Yeah,
slapped
yeah,
that
we
TENS
stopped
unit
that.
on me, and I
Oh,
would
yeah.
just walk around with it on. Like
It was like a miracle
Yep,
when she was.
it
They're
was
nice.
instant pain reliever.
Yeah, and those are how much are those in your office?
I want to say we sell them for $40 in the
Yeah.
office. They're very, and again, you could probably get on Amazon and find, much more expensive versions of them, but they're all kind of the same thing. They-
Jennifer has
they
a
are
great
great.
testimonial, and me too, because I used it when I fell off my pony. That was a lifesaver. But you
Mhm.
also used on me. Talk about the CBD products that you have.
Yeah.
She loves it.
I love.
We
that
have some at the
ointment.
office, Mel, if you ever need it.
Yeah, we do have some pretty awesome products in the office. We obviously, one of the most common things that a lot of chiropractors sell from a muscle relaxing standpoint is the BioFreeze.
Mhm.
And I think that's something, years ago when BioFreeze first came out, it was pretty much they marketed it to chiropractors and it was only sold in chiropractic offices. And then I think they did because I want to say that the product was developed, by a chiropractor. And then I think, they started kind of branching off. I think some physical therapists started using it and things like that. But that was kind of the caveat with the BioFreeze for years is that it was, it was only provided, from a doctor, from a chiropractor or a physical therapist. But I think from a business standpoint, I think the makers of BioFreeze realized that, they could be making a lot more money if they sold this stuff at the drugstore as well. So
Everywhere,
now,
yeah.
but people don't realize that the product you get in my office, it's BioFreeze Professional. And the product you get at CVS or Walgreens or anywhere else, it's just BioFreeze. It's a much different product than what we sell in the practice.
But when you got that CBD stuff, I
Right,
didn't
and
even
that's-
care about BioFreeze.
Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of why we got the CBD. I actually had a colleague of mine, a friend I went to school with. He was getting really big into using some of the CBD products at his practice down in Florida. And I remember I was in Florida for my 10-year reunion. Him and I were talking about it a little bit, and he was just telling me a little bit about the product and how his patients loved it. And I said, well, heck, let's try this stuff in the practice. So I ended up getting the CBD cream, and what's neat about this cream, it comes in 5 different levels. It comes in a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
What
And
level did I
obviously,
use?
I go big or
Probably
go
a
home with you guys.
5.
I'm only gonna give you guys the 5. I'd
Yeah,
bring you guys
okay.
the 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but
Down everything.
Oh, yeah.
It
Well, I
was,
remember
like,
the first time
deep down
oh,
to the
it's-
bone.
and again, you don't need a lot of it. I remember when I
No.
first, started getting interested in the product, I reached out to some of our vendors and I wanted to get some samples of it. So they sent me a big pack of samples of, all the different
Yeah.
levels. And I was kind of busy with patients that day. I didn't have a whole lot of time to look at it. So it was one of those little packs. I may have given you guys the little sample packs, but I was in between patients. I wanted to see how it worked. So I grabbed it, opened it up, put the whole thing on my shoulder, rubbed it in, and I'm walking around. And I mean, it definitely had an odor to it. And I learned real fast that you don't need a lot of it.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of that product goes a long way because it is pretty, it's a
You
little
put it
pricey.
on my low back, and I really thought that I broke
Yeah.
my back, but I did not break my back. But it felt like
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like,
I put it on my back. I put it on my knees
yeah,
before,
oh, joint,
and it really
The
bugs
helped
are
flying in my
with
ears
that
over
pain.
here.
and it's all natural, right?
It is. It comes from the cannabis plant, and
Yeah.
and I think one of the biggest things, it's just the CBD oil. There's no THC in it. It's perfectly legal.
That's too
I think that's
bad.
one of the things people, get a little worried about when they get the CBD cream. They worry about, am I going to take a drug test? But I mean, the CBD cream is
You know what
there's
though? The
no
body
THC.
doesn't absorb through the skin stuff the way that, like, if you want to talk about Rick Simpson oil, he used it for skin cancer. That is one of the highest THCs you can put on your body, but you're not going to get high if you do that.
Yeah.
Got bugs attacking me over here.
I know they don't like you.
I know,
They're still in
I know.
that phrase. So if something like that even did have THC, it wouldn't make anybody high.
It wouldn't, and
I
I think
mean-
people when they have that concern, it's not really because they're afraid they're going to get high. It's because of their employment. It's like
That's
you hear
true,
so
they
many
want it.
stories of people,
Yeah.
you know,
well,
just
poppy seeds.
Mhm.
You can fail a drug test by
By
eating
eating a
too many
bagel.
poppy
Right,
seeds.
Oh,
right.
yeah, absolutely.
Everything
Yeah.
And
bagel.
they think you're doing opiates.
Mhm.
right, and that's one
You're
that we
like,
had to
no,
really.
it's my bagel.
Oh, yeah.
Bagel. I'm gonna die.
I really like poppy seeds. I
Right.
just really like this.
And that was something we really had to do our homework on before we decided to go with the vendor that we used to get our CBD, was to make sure that they assured us that there was no THC in that product.
Yeah.
Because I mean that would be quite the talk to have with a patient if they came in and I sold that stuff to them and they got fired from their job because
Well,
they
it has
failed
to
a
be
drug
listed
test.
on the label, so
Right.
everybody
So
should double
so
check.
the product we have, I mean, it's totally legal. It's there's no THC. You can't get in trouble for it. But I mean, and I think with CBD creams as well. I mean, we get a very high quality product from a great manufacturer. I think
Mhm.
something with the CBD industry. I think now that it has become so mainstream, you really have to make sure you get a good product. Now I think you can go to any corner drugstore
Oh,
and
it
find
is a good
and
product.
find CBD, on the shelf. I think, and some of that stuff you might have to be careful with. It might have things in it that might make you fail a
That's
drug
true.
test.
Well, and there could be stuff, even if your body doesn't absorb that much through the skin, there are
Mhm.
still things that if you put on your skin, it does absorb it. And so
Right.
you should be careful that what you're putting in your
Exactly.
body is a healthy
Right.
product.
Mhm.
And we have, it's a great product that we sell, and patients love it.
And do you adjust kids in your practice?
We do. We certainly do see kids. Now there are some chiropractors that kind of specialize in pediatrics. I mean, we don't
But I mean,
specialize
you're
in
fully
pediatrics.
capable and
Absolutely.
you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the one thing that they might specialize in it, but I have seen babies come in to get adjusted. Didn't you help somebody like with their child had colic or
Yeah,
wasn't it
there's a lot of little things that chiropractic can
just
really
like,
help
talk us
with.
about a story. I remember I think there was a child that had ear tubes maybe that you had helped. Like it just made it better for the
Right,
child or
right.
less
Well,
of an
I
issue.
think really, a real big issue with a lot of children are the chronic ear infections,
Mhm.
and that's one thing. I mean, a lot of times, with the chronic ear infections in kids, one of the biggest reasons some kids develop the chronic ear infections is really just because of the level of the eustachian tubes. I mean, as we get older, when
Mm.
we're born, the eustachian tubes are on a pretty parallel plane, and as we get older, they start to drop down a little bit exteriorly, so that the body's able to drain
Okay.
more effectively. And what happens with a lot of kids, if they have any kind of a little cold or allergen or anything, and their body's producing, different, mucus and things like that within the body, and if that drainage, if the eustachian tubes are level, and that drainage comes inward as opposed to outward, it
Mm.
can cause a lot of inflammation in the inner ear, and cause the ear infections. And one thing with chiropractic, just by kind of loosening up any kind of muscle spasms in the neck, getting everything mobilized, really what we're doing, we're just kind of allowing that drainage to kind of drain outward as opposed to inward, and it really can be quite effective with kids with chronic ear infections. And
Tell
it's
us a
something-
story of somebody, a patient that you have adjusted. It could be an adult, a child, that
Mhm.
it changed their perception of chiropractic.
I'll tell you, there are a lot of things with chiropractic that I,
Tell us a
Even
specific story.
specific story. I
Oh.
mean, just some cool stories. And again, I mean, I remember back in school, I've always been the type that, would you guys know this about me? We can talk about things, but until I see something happen, I'm going to be skeptical about
Oh,
it. And I remember
yeah.
even back in
He's
school.
a chiropractor. Like, I'm skeptical about
Well, I
this
mean, there are
profession.
things. I mean,
That's
well,
been 8 years in
I
college.
remember back in
7 years.
school. I mean, back in school, you're learning about all the foundations of chiropractic and what it can do, what it can't do. And I remember, one of the things learning in certain classes, one of the things that kind of seemed crazy to me at the time was, they were saying that chiropractic can help kids that have, bedwetting issues. And I remember learning about that, and I said, "Oh, that cool story, but I'm not going to put that on my on my postcards or anything. That seems a little crazy." And I mean, I had never seen it happen. I had never done that, but I mean, I remember learning about that in school. And I remember I had a patient one time who, she came in and she was talking about her son who was having chronic bedwetting. And I, again with the internet, she got online and read somewhere that chiropractic could help.
And you're like,
And
absolutely,
she
I
asked
can
me
help
about
you.
it, and
I
I'm
can
like,
do
you know
this.
what? I was like, I remember hearing about this in school. And from a medical standpoint, I see the connection, because, the brain controls the entire body.
Yeah.
The same way the brain connects to the arms, legs, the brain connects to the bladder. And the way it does that is through the central nervous system. And I said, again, I'll be honest, I don't have a great track. I've never tried this with a kid. I don't know that it's going to work, but heck, let's give it a whirl. And she brought her son in who was having chronic bedwetting issues. And we started working on him. I think I adjusted him 2 times that week. Mom came in that next week, ecstatic, saying, he's better. He hasn't wet his bed since.
How old was he?
He was 4 or 5 years old. He was a
so
little guy.
Still a little guy.
He was, and that was one
Aw.
of those things. I mean, it was. Now I'm a believer. I mean, it certainly can just that
Ah.
connection from the brain to the bladder. By just normalizing that connection by trying to, and again, I didn't have a magic bedwetting adjustment. I just kind of went through his spine and just, kind of found areas that weren't moving the right way. And I really, kind of focused on the lumbar spine, the sacral plexus, and we adjusted little guy. And I was like, let's see what this does.
Can you
And
adjust what is the last bone, the
the
tailbone?
coccyx,
Can you adjust that?
you can adjust that.
How do you adjust that?
I'd have to call my malpractice carrier first before we. There are techniques to adjust the coccyx.
Is it
and it's called the internal coccyx adjustment. Another adjustment that I have yet to perform in my practice. I will probably refer that out.
If you're hearing this,
But yes,
he is so down.
yeah, that is
just
something.
has
But
to make a
I'll
phone
tell
call.
you, again. Luckily, I live in the South.
Moves.
Yeah, that's right. But luckily, I live in the South, and we don't see this a whole lot. But again,
That's Miss Anderson.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, again. Oh.
Was on Jennifer.
Are we doing this on next week's podcast? No, but I do remember back in school, going through these classes, learning about all the techniques. We had a professor who was at our school, and he practiced before he became a professor. He practiced up north, and he had a practice. I think he was up in he was up in the Northeast somewhere, a place that got a lot of snow, a lot of ice. And he said, one of the biggest adjustments that he did in his practice were people who were out, they slipped on the ice, they fell down and fractured the coccyx.
yeah.
And he was I
So
believe.
if they fracture, you want to put it back in the other direction,
You, well,
kind of align it.
What is
yeah,
what is the maneuver?
Can you
yeah.
show us?
No, but it's an internal.
So it goes like this.
I mean,
And so
show us
they
if you're
crack it, so it's kind of you're
Well, I
pushing
mean, if you have the coccyx and
Okay.
it's
Fractured.
basically it's in a malposition
You can do
anterior.
that when you deliver.
Basically,
too.
you would, and again,
Snap
that is
that out.
another way a lot of women fracture their coccyx is through childbirth.
I learned that from
And there,
Rebecca.
yep, and there are times
Ah,
that
yeah.
that's and
So could you help?
there are some different ways to address the coccyx. There's some more of a doing it from the outside, some tissue pulls where you kind of
Okay.
can kind of stretch. But again, there is an adjustment called the internal coccyx adjustment where doctors would glove up and they would internally.
and
Position?
you've never done this.
I have never done this.
I
This is
feel like
something
there's
that
a first time for everything.
something
I
we-
think he
I think
needs
so,
this
too.
we did
opportunity.
not practice in school.
Oh, you were also certified to do acupuncture.
I was at one time. Yes,
Are you still? Or are you gonna-
I believe I probably am still legally able to perform it, but I think with me again, it's one of those things. I'm the type that if I don't understand something or know something, I want to experience it. And I remember in my early years of
Yeah.
practice, I had a lot of people asking me about acupuncture, and at the time, I didn't really know much about it. And I remember hearing that there was a course in North Carolina that chiropractors could take. I believe it was. I think
It was
like
90.
it was a pretty long course. It was how many hours was that? It was like a 500-hour course
Oh,
that we as chiropractors could take to be certified in
you
acupuncture.
did it, right?
And I did the course, and I mean, I learned a lot about it.
I was really upset when he didn't
Well, I
incorporate
mean,
that into his
I-
practice.
Acupuncture's, I mean, I think it's something that, after talking to some acupuncturists who do nothing but acupuncture, and they went to school for acupuncture, studied acupuncture for years and years. I feel like, the course that I took as a chiropractor, in my opinion, wasn't really adequate to be a master at
But
chiropractic
you at least
at
have
acupuncture.
experience.
I have
in,
experienced it. I
like-
practiced on colleagues in class,
Yeah.
but it was one of those
You
things. And
practice on us.
I know some acupuncturists
you
around
for
town
yourself.
that,
I would let him.
yeah. But I mean,
Would you do it on me? You're certified.
I don't remember what I practiced on. I
Okay,
practice,
yeah.
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 But I mean,
Needles?
I think as a chiropractor, I
Be a
think,
little pin
my
cushion.
my
Down.
specialty is chiropractic. And I think, for as much as I learned about acupuncture, I also realized that there was so much more to it that I didn't
Mm.
learn in that course. And I think, for me to spend time away from my practice doing acupuncture and would
It
would be
didn't
a
make
disservice.
sense.
It didn't
Yeah.
make sense. And I think I have some colleagues in the area who do nothing but acupuncture. That's their specialty. And I think, they are probably much better at it than my 500-hour course. So I feel like, for the patient's well-being, I'd rather send my patients to them to have acupuncture done by someone who's a master at it. And
So
I felt like I wasn't a master after a
you guys,
500-hour course.
you guys take all major insurance
We
for the
do.
most part, right? And how do people, because we're going to be wrapping this up, how do they find you? What's the address of your practice? What's your website?
We are Anderson Chiropractic Center. We are right downtown Holly Springs. We're right off of West Holly Springs Road. We're directly
Well, there's
across
a
the street
few
from.
off West Holly Springs Road.
We're the only one off West Holly Springs Road.
Okay.
Now, if you go to Holly Springs Road, you'll find some other
Yeah.
chiropractor. We are the only ones off of West Holly
His
Springs
looks
Road.
like a little ski chateau.
It does.
Yes.
It's across the street from Walgreens.
It is. We're right across from
Yeah.
Walgreens.
And
I
behind
used to
our
say
office.
next to Rite Aid, but Rite Aid is
So
no,
it's
is no longer there.
131
West Holly Springs Road,
and
right
that's
in downtown Holly Springs.
AndersonChiropracticCenter.com.
Absolutely. And our phone number is 919-552-0751.
Awesome. All major insurance is accepted, including, didn't they open that up for veterans? We
They
won't
do,
go
and
too
that's
much into
that's
that,
another
but
awesome thing that we do.
Yeah.
We see a lot of veterans in the practice, and it's covered 100% by the VA.
That's
Oh,
good.
that's awesome.
So
So
it's an
if you
awesome
guys need an
service.
amazing
Very cool.
chiropractor, I can definitely recommend him, and Jennifer
Yeah.
can too.
10
And
out
I
of
will be
10
seeing
would
him.
recommend.
And Mel, she trusts him with her life, so she'll
I
be
do.
seeing him.
Awesome.
do.
Well, thank you, ladies.
Yeah, thanks for having us,
It's
Dr.
been a blast.
Anderson.
I'll be back next week for the demo.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the T.A.R. Life podcast with top producing mega agent Erica Anderson. If you've enjoyed this episode or found the content to be useful or fun, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Visit our website at www.teamandersonrealty.com. We are actively serving the Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, and the coastal regions of North Carolina. If you're looking to sell a home, please contact Team Anderson Realty to set up an in-person or virtual consultation today.